Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar from Prestige Senior Living. We are grateful to have you with us. My name is Angie France. I am the product manager with Prestige for our Celebrations Assisted Living Wellness Program, as well as our Expressions Memory Care Program. And we are looking forward to this presentation today. We are so excited to have Adria Thompson with us today of Be Light Care. And Adria has partnered with us before, and we find that her information regarding dementia care for caregivers, family members, loved ones who are facing this time in this season in a loved one's life is so important to address. And so with Prestige, we do have our Expressions memory care program that we utilize in 20 of our Expressions communities. We find that the informed care, the personalized care, personally touching the lives of our residents every day is so important. And we know that that is Adria's goal as well. When she started in this business years ago as a speech and language pathologist, she really saw the needs for training and teaching others, and really kind of directing them along the path of best ways to work with residents who have a diagnosis of dementia and to give them the best life possible. And so we're grateful for that. Adria, as I mentioned, is a speech and language pathologist. He's also a certified dementia practitioner. Lots of experience with working with folks with dementia. And so, Adria, we know that you've worked a lot in social media. Adria puts on a lot of videos on Facebook, as well as Instagram and TikTok. She has a huge following out there. And it's really simple ways that we can meet the needs of our loved ones or our caregivers within our community, can find ways to help residents feel comfortable, feel like they're valued and reassured, and to help with some of those creative ways that we can communicate in better ways with them. And so, Adria, I'm going to hand the webinar over to you, let you get started and share some really valuable information for all of those who are tuning in with us today, and help their comfort level and help them to feel assured in the care that they're providing for their loved ones or for their residents or wherever they may be in this part of life and dealing with someone with dementia. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks to Prestige for putting this on. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right. Okay, so yeah, let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about informed and empathetic dementia care. And Angie gave me a good introduction, so we don't have to land here very long, but I do want you to know that in addition to knowing about dementia and treating individuals with dementia as a speech therapist, I also know about this personally, as my grandmother is living with dementia currently. So I've seen it personally and professionally. So in order to kind of talk about dementia and how we can provide good empathetic care, I want to introduce you to someone we're going to call Patty. Now, Patty is not her real name, and this is not a real picture of her, but Patty represents a real person that I worked with about 5 years ago. And Patty was kind of the catalyst for me of diving into how do we provide better care for individuals with dementia. Because what I was seeing in my own world is that it wasn't being provided well. We weren't meeting their needs, and not for a lack of care or not for a lack of compassion, but mostly because we just didn't really know. And when I say we, I mean, she was living in a memory care community. So myself and the other individuals who were working there, we just didn't know how to meet her needs. And so that kind of put me on a path of where I am now, which is kind of specializing in dementia care. So I'm honored to introduce you to this person we're going to call Patty, because she had a big part in my life. Patty was a retired school teacher. She, like I said, was a new resident to the memory care community I was working in. She was from a very rural part of Kentucky. She had 2 children. She was divorced. She was a very independent woman. She, especially after her daughters grew up and were out of the house, she was on her own. She called her own shots. She did her own thing. And she had a great sense of humor. She was really enjoyable to be around. However, there were some concerns that we had. The concerns included things like she was just frequently agitated. And when I say that word, we can put other words that mean the same thing. We might call it she was irritable, she was frustrated constantly. She had moments where she might have demonstrated some aggression at times, but agitated, she would get upset. Right? And for many of you who are watching, you might have someone in your life with dementia, someone you love, someone you're caring for. And so as I'm describing Patty in the last slide of who she is to the core, and then also on this slide, as I'm talking about the concerns we had, I want you to reflect back on the person with dementia in your life. Who are they? What are those things that make them who they are? But also, what are your concerns? If I were to say, what is the hardest thing in caring for your loved one? Think about how you would answer that. And this is how we would answer it for Patty. She was frequently agitated. She also would wonder quite a bit. We're going to talk about what that means, but she was trying to get out of whatever space she was in. She was isolating herself from other residents. This makes me think about my great-grandmother before she passed. She was 95 and she had to go to a skilled nursing facility for rehab. And she said, I don't want to go there. That's where all the old people are, right? She didn't see herself in that way. So she felt like she didn't quite belong. And Patty was similar to that. Patty also refused help from caregivers. Despite the fact that she needed it desperately. Many of you might experience that as well. The person you're caring for needs help, but you are struggling to get them to agree to it or to get them to participate in it in any kind of way. And for Patty, the biggest struggle was showering. So we're gonna reflect back on Patty throughout this entire presentation, and we're going to talk about why these things were happening and what we did and what you can do to help. Before we get too far into talking about Patty and these concerns, I want to take a second to define a few things. The first is, what is dementia? Now, dementia is a general term. The Alzheimer's Association defines it as a loss of memory, language, problem solving, and other thinking abilities that are severe enough to interfere with daily life. I want to present to you a condensed version of this that involves 2 things. Dementia is a change in thinking that affects your life. In general, that's what it is. Dementia is a very general term, much in the same way that cancer is a general term. If you were to hear that Bob has cancer, you know that Bob is sick, that he has a diagnosis, and that's not a good thing to have. But you don't know what type of cancer it is, how severe it is, what kind of treatments he needs. Much in the same way, dementia is just a general term that says someone is having difficulty thinking and it's affecting their life. There are specific types of dementia, much like there are specific diagnoses or types of cancer, right? There's leukemia, Hodgkin's lymphoma, breast cancer, right? There's different kinds that gives us more specifics. The specific types of dementia, there are actually hundreds, but I'm going to share with you the 4 most common types of dementia. The most common type of dementia, above all the others, that accounts for anywhere from 60 to 80% of all diagnoses, is Alzheimer's disease. Now, in the white here, you're going to see me list the most predominant symptoms that appear first. So over the course of someone having dementia, over years, months or years, they will demonstrate all kinds of symptoms as it gets worse. However, at the beginning, those first symptoms are really what we look at, amongst other things, when we diagnose what type of dementia someone has. So Alzheimer's disease is classified as having a predominant symptom of short-term memory loss at first. So this is that classic forgetfulness, right? Not remembering where they've put something, saying things multiple times, or having difficulty in learning new things. Patty had Alzheimer's disease. There's also something called vascular dementia. Vascular dementia, and let me take a second and say all types of dementia are brain diseases, right? So this is affecting the brain. You've heard of the concept of heart failure, kidney failure, right? But often we don't think about dementia as brain failure. But that's really what it is that the brain is deteriorating and it's diseased. So vascular dementia is a specific type of dementia that is caused by blood flow changes to the brain. That means that there are parts of the brain that is not getting enough blood, or it's getting too much blood. Either way, it can cause damage, little spots of damage. Usually, individuals with vascular dementia will have a past history of a stroke, also known as a cerebrovascular accident, or a mini stroke, which is also known as a transient ischemic attack. So many people will have a history of these kind of conditions, and ultimately, maybe even 10, 15 years down the road, they will have a diagnosis of vascular dementia. Because vascular dementia is caused by little spots of damage in the brain, it matters where in the brain that damage is. That's going to tell us what symptoms they have. So if one person has vascular dementia because of damage in the frontal lobe of their brain, they're going to experience different symptoms than another person who has had this vascular dementia and damage in the occipital lobe of the brain, which is in the back. Different spots of damage, different symptoms. But if I were to give you general symptoms someone experiences, I would say change in personality, slowness in thinking, and confusion. Lewy body dementia is another common type of dementia. This is classified with symptoms of sleep disturbances. We might hear this called REM, or rapid eye movement, sleep behavior disorder. This results in someone being very fitful when they sleep. They are acting out their dreams. Sometimes they might fall out of bed, but really it's them propelling themselves out of bed because of a dream. They're very hard to sleep with, individuals with Lewy body dementia, okay? They also will experience visual hallucinations. So that means that they see things in their environment that are not actually there, and their brain can't tell the difference of what's real and what's not. Often they will see animals, people, children, shadows, or bugs. They also will experience fluctuating alertness. So one moment they might be really with it, really lucid, and another moment they might be really confused or agitated. It's a roller coaster of alertness, of memory, of function a lot of times. This is the type of dementia that Robin Williams had before he passed, although he was never diagnosed while he was alive. The next type of dementia is called frontotemporal dementia. This is a type of dementia that affects the frontal and the temporal lobes of the brain. There are two main subtypes of frontotemporal dementia. One is called the behavioral variant. In individuals with this variant, they will experience changes in personality in their behavior. They might demonstrate social inappropriateness. They might develop fixations, obsessions, addictions at times. They will also be very impulsive. And the other subtype is the language variant, which is called primary progressive aphasia. This is the type of dementia that most recently you have been heard about because of Bruce Willis. This is actually Frontotemporal Dementia Awareness Week, so you might have heard a lot about it this week more than usual. But for the language variant, we will see difficulty with language. So thinking of the words they want to say, or they are speaking, but it's really not making sense. Frontotemporal dementia is the most common type of dementia in individuals under the age of 65. Most people are diagnosed between 40 and 60. It's important that we take a second to talk about how there's different types of dementia because our expectations should be different. So if someone has Lewy body dementia, as you can see in the description, they're not going to have short-term memory loss as one of the first symptoms that they demonstrate. And often we might be hesitant to call that dementia, but that's what it is, right? So understanding what type of dementia someone has will help us know what expectations to have for them, and ultimately it allows us to care for them better. I want to introduce you to this idea. We're going to talk about this for the rest of the presentation, that everything someone with dementia does makes sense to them. Another way to say that is everything they do has a reason. If we can kind of keep this in the forefront of our mind when we are interacting with or caring for someone with dementia, it will allow us to be more successful in communicating with them and in providing them care. Because too often, when we don't understand dementia and we don't understand what's going on with them, we just think that the way that they're behaving is just completely irrational. It's so frustrating, and I hear you. I've been there, I felt it too. But we need to understand that although it makes no sense to us, and although we don't understand it, we need to understand that for them, everything they do makes sense to them. Everything they do has a reason. And this is going to, we're going to talk about this as we go on, and it'll make more sense to you. But before we kind of dive into these concerns that we had with Patty, I want to take a second to talk about communication. Because although I am a speech language pathologist, and perhaps I'm a little bit biased, I think communication is the root of all interactions we have with someone with dementia. And if we don't do it well, then we make things harder on ourselves and on them. Communication is we all know what communication is, right? But often we only think about the fact that communication is speaking, it's talking, but that's just one form of communication. Also, writing is both of those, speaking and writing, are forms of expression. And that's just one side of communication. The other side of communication is what happens for the other person when the expression is happening. And that's comprehension, right? Understanding what they hear, and also reading. So that's comprehension. And then we have expression. Most people with dementia at some point in their diagnosis will have difficulty with communication. So even if they can speak well and they're talking all the time, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the comprehension ability to understand what you're saying, right? So I want to take a second and give you a few tips on how to communicate with someone with dementia so that we make it easy for them to comprehend, and so we can allow them to express themselves more efficiently as well. The first thing we're going to do before we communicate with someone with dementia is to gain their attention. Gaining their attention is important because as the brain experiences this disease, it will start to lose the ability to attend, to focus, to concentrate on things. Now, I think that I have a pretty poor attention at times. I get easily distracted, but for people with dementia, their capacity for attention is much lower. And so we need to make sure that, number one, we have their attention before we ever tell them what to do or share a story with them or anything, really. We have to get their attention. So one way you can do that is to get near to them. Too often we might try to talk to them across the room or talk to them behind their back. The important thing here is we want to get near to them, and we want to get on their eye level. So if they're sitting, we might need to squat down. If they're standing, we need to stand up. We need to get on their eye level, gain some eye contact, and then we can say their name. That's a really simple way to gain someone's attention. We've been conditioned since we were born to attend, to turn our head, to pay attention when we hear our name. The next thing we want to do is speak simply. Now, too often we might interpret this as we need to kind of dumb down our language or talk to them like we might talk to a child. And that's not at all what this means. That kind of language, we actually have a name for it. It's called elder speak. And sometimes you might have been guilty of using it yourself, or you might have heard other people doing it. And that sounds like, well, hi there, handsome. How are you doing? Oh, you look so good today. Oh, I love seeing you. Right? That kind of sing-songy talk and some of the words we use, that's not effective. Research has showed that that is not effective. What we want to do instead is just speak simply. We use far more figurative language than we probably realize throughout a day, right? What's up? What's going on? Are you feeling under the weather? Oh man, those kind of things are figurative language. We're adding complexity to an already complex thing when we talk to someone with dementia like that. So say what you mean. I'll never forget one time I told a man with dementia to grab a seat, and he turned around and put his hands on his behind. He grabbed his seat, right? And I thought, well, that's actually what I said. So think about what you're saying and be as direct and say exactly what you mean. We want to slow down. The rate at which I'm speaking to you in this presentation would probably not be a good rate to talk to someone with dementia. Be too fast. But once again, we don't need to speak really slow necessarily. Instead, we need to add pauses between ideas. Now, silence can be uncomfortable, but if you notice in this moment where I gave a pause, it seems like kind of out of nowhere, right? Think about the fact that you probably paid attention a little bit more. Maybe you were doing something else, and when you didn't hear me talk, you might have turned your head. Pausing actually gains attention. It also allows time for them to process what you've said. If we say, what do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? Food. What food do you want? What do you need? What do you want? Are you hungry? We're just starting over the clock of them understanding every time we talk. Instead, we just need to be silent sometimes. Repeat key details. This is one of my favorite tips and one we don't think about a lot. But for some people with dementia, especially who experience memory loss, they might only have a memory of a few seconds. And when we say things like, oh my goodness, I saw Karen at the grocery store the other day. Have you seen her recently? She looked so good. She had just been on vacation. Have you seen her? I said the word Karen at the beginning, but at the very end, I was saying, throughout the conversation, I was saying she and her, right? By the time you get to the end of a conversation and you're using pronouns like he, she, it, that, those, these, we're referring back to things we said earlier. They may not remember what you're referring to. So instead you can say, oh, I saw Karen at the grocery store. She looked so good. Karen just got back from vacation. Have you seen Karen recently? So just making that slight change in repeating what you're referring to can be helpful for some people with dementia. We can also use nonverbal language using gestures and facial expressions to get across our message. We can point to things in the room. We might act something out if we feel like someone's having a difficult time. And I wanted to give you just a few tips when you are visiting someone with dementia. I often hear, well, I don't know what to talk about. Maybe they can't remember things very well. So when you say things like, what have you done today? Have you had a good day? They might not know. They might not know how their day has been. So here's my tips. Think about the 5 senses. Talk about things in the moment that you see, that you hear, that you smell, that you feel, that you taste. That might sound like, ooh, feel this shirt. Oh, look out there at that bird, right? Think about how you can engage them with their environment. Second, tell them a story. It can be an exciting thing like a vacation you just got back from, or a good taco you had for lunch. Telling stories is helpful for people with dementia to feel engaged in your life. You also might want to ask for advice, and this goes along with the next one too, is you talk about their feelings. Because if we ask facts, what did you have for breakfast this morning? They can be wrong because there's a right or wrong answer. But if we focus on feelings, they can never be wrong. So asking for their advice or asking what their feelings are, that might sound like telling them a story and then saying, what do you think about that? Would that make you mad? Because that just allows them to have more success. If as long as you're focusing on their feelings, you can't be wrong. And the last is to reminisce. Talk about things from long ago. Even people with short-term memory loss often will remember long-term memories. All right, so using those good communication skills, we're going to move into how we can tackle some of these things, these concerns we had with Patty. The first was agitation. So let's talk about why agitation might happen in someone with dementia. I want you to pause and just take a second to acknowledge the fact that that agitation happens in people without dementia, right? You get agitated. I get agitated, probably daily, for sure daily. Like, things can agitate me. So when we talk about individuals with dementia who are agitated, they're no different than us. It's just that their triggers might be different, or maybe we don't know what they are. So first of all, individuals with dementia have a loss of independence and control. For Patty, that was a big deal. She had lived on her own. She was very independent and very proud of it. And to all of a sudden be in a scenario where she couldn't make her own decisions because she didn't have the ability to, was making her frustrated, understandably so. We also will see cognitive changes that happen in individuals with dementia that can be very agitating. Some of those include attention, like we talked about earlier. They can't concentrate on things anymore. And if they can't concentrate on things, then they're also not going to be able to remember them well, the short-term memory loss that they experience. How frustrating would it be to not remember what you've done in a day? Reasoning, so being able to think about something in a logical way, understanding that A and B are connected in some way, not being able to put those things together can be frustrating. Problem-solving deficits happen. So individuals with dementia experience problems, but they don't have the ability to find the solutions anymore. And orientation. Can you imagine not understanding who you are, where you are, what time it is at any given time? That is cause enough to be agitated, right? Third, discomfort and pain. They might be hungry, thirsty. They might have a hangnail. They might have a little rock in their shoe that's driving them crazy. But if they don't have the ability to communicate or to ask for help, then you're just going to see them be mad. The environment can be agitating. I was at Panera the other day and I was working a little bit, and there was a person in just a few tables down from me that was on their phone watching videos on full blast volume. Everyone in the whole restaurant could hear it. That agitated me. That random, those sounds, it was loud. That happens for people with dementia too. It could be things they see, things they hear that could be causing it. Their own brain could be telling them things that's agitating. They could have a visual hallucination. They could see a man standing in the corner. That would make me agitated. A delusion is an untrue belief. So sometimes their brain tells them something that's not true, and they can't decipher if it is true or not. Medication side effects. So some medications can cause agitation as a side effect that could be happening. Medical conditions. Many of you might have had experience with someone with dementia or someone in your life getting a urinary tract infection, and that can cause them to be easily agitated or confused or frustrated. Boredom. This is often not thought about. But I was at a doctor's appointment not too long ago. I was in a room. I didn't have any service on my cell phone. I had no book. I had nothing with me, and I had to sit for over an hour waiting for the doctor. I was bored and I was agitated. People with dementia can get really bored as well if they're not being stimulated and they just feel restless. Trauma. There could be something that is triggering a traumatic experience, a traumatic memory that we see as agitation. And last, transition. Transitioning from one location to the next, transitioning from one task to the next can be agitating for some people, especially if they really liked what they were doing before. So there's all these reasons why Patty could have been agitated. But if we notice some of these things, we need to do something about it, right? One of the easiest things we can do is meet their need, right? If they're hungry, we give them food. If they're thirsty, we give them water. If they're bored, we give them something to do. Sometimes the agitation is easy to meet, right? Like that. Or removing triggers. If it's something in the environment, make it stop, right? If it's a medication, stop it. But often agitation is maybe not that easy to fix. And for Patty, it wasn't that easy. For Patty, we had to figure out this balance because her situation was that she constantly was saying, "Where is my mom?" Now, some of you watching might also experience this really difficult situation where someone with dementia is asking for someone who has died. And we have to weigh out, how do we respond to this? I'm going to show you what the two options are so that you can make the best decision for your loved one. The first I want to talk about is called reality orientation. What that looks like is that we bring facts. We bring reality to the person. So in this scenario with Patty, we could, number one, tell them the truth. And number two, tell them context that would be important to them. So in response to Patty saying, "Where's my mom?" we could say, "Patty, your mom passed away 20 years ago. She died of cancer, but you were with her until the very end. You were at her funeral, but you may not remember it anymore because you're having trouble with your memory." Most of the time, this works only for people in the very early stages of dementia, those who are just starting to show signs of brain change, because they still might have the ability to pull back some of these memories as you're telling them and say, "Oh, you're right. Oh, that's true." And my grandmother was the same way when she would ask for her husband. We would tell her the truth at first, but then there came a time where this answer was no longer validating to her. Instead, it was devastating to her. It went from, "Oh, you're right. Okay, that's what I thought," to, "What? Why did no one tell me? No, she didn't," right? Arguing or just being obviously agitated. If we're trying to reduce agitation, we don't want to bring in this set of information that's going to increase it. So the other option is to do what's called validation, which is acknowledging the feelings that they're experiencing. So if reality is the facts, validation are the feelings. Number one, we're going to repeat it back to them, what they're feeling. So in the example, it says, "You miss your mom." Because that's what Patty was demonstrating when she says, "Where's my mom?" She's missing her mom. Number two, we can acknowledge that it's an understandable feeling. You can say, "I'm so sorry, I don't know where she is. I miss my mom when she's away too." You're going to relate to her. "I know what that's like to wonder where my mom is." And number three, we're going to redirect to a more positive view of the same topic, or we're going to change to a preferred different topic. So if we want to stay on the same topic of her mom, but we want to change the conversation to where she is, we can say something like, "Do people tell you that you look like your mom?" Right? So we're still talking about her mom that she misses. We're reminiscing a little bit. Validation works for people in the moderate to later stages of dementia, and sometimes even in the mild stages. But the way you're going to know what works and what's not is you're going to have to try them both out and see what brings them. The goal here is what brings them peace, what allows them to kind of move on in their day. So consider those two ideas. The second thing that we had a difficult time with Patty was wandering. She was aimlessly navigating around her environment. These are a few definitions. We also might hear exit seeking, which is basically wandering, but then also with the intent of trying to find a way out. Also, the term elopement is leaving a safe environment without a caregiver's knowledge. One time I walked into Patty's room and she had her calf stuck out her window. She had raised her window just a little bit. That's all it could go. And she was trying to sneak out her window. And so instead of being confrontational and saying, no, stop, I used validation. I walked in and said, oh, I'm sorry, I was just getting some socks. I grabbed a pair of socks and I said, do you need anything? Do you need some help? And she said, I'm trying to get out. And I said, oh, okay. Yeah, okay, let me help you. Come with me. I know a better way than this. And so I took her out, and I knew there was a patio that was enclosed. She couldn't get out. And so we went to the patio, we went outside. I said, yes, we did it. We're out. Okay, what do we want to do? And she said, oh, it's too cold out here. I said, oh yeah, it is. Let's go get some coffee. So I brought her back inside and we drank coffee, right? So instead of confronting, what are you doing? No, you can't. What we can do is validate her feelings in that moment of needing to escape, and then redirecting her to a situation that's more preferred. She was demonstrating some isolation. She felt like she didn't belong here. She didn't want to talk to the other residents. What we can do when someone is feeling isolated or just not wanting to do anything is to provide them a purpose. All humans need a sense of purpose, and we can facilitate that for someone with dementia, but we can only do that in the way that we present it. Let me give you an example. For Patty, we wanted her to be more involved in the community, to interact with the other residents in a positive way, to feel like she was helping out. We also knew she was bored, so this is going to be helpful. So we brought her before breakfast every morning and for dinner every night. We brought her sugar packets that were all mixed up, pink, yellow, white. And we said, Patty, excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'm so busy, but do you think you could help me with something? We're going to be drinking coffee and we need these sorted out. Can you put the pink in here, the white in here, and the yellow in here? You would help us out so much. And she would do that. She also would roll utensils up in napkins. Now, they weren't the utensils we ended up using for meals, but for her, she felt like she was giving back. And this was allowing her to go around to the tables and put the sugar packets on different places and talk to people. She was a giver. She's a caregiver, right? She's a teacher. She loves to help others. So providing them, if we just dropped all this in front of her and said, hey, sort these, that's not providing her a sense of purpose. We need to make her feel needed. Now, the biggest struggle we had here was that she was refusing help. And this might be something that you're experiencing with your loved one. So we're going to talk about this a little bit. The main reason why someone with dementia will refuse help is a term called anosognosia. Anosognosia means that someone is unable to understand they have deficits. Now, this is different than denial. In denial, you have the capacity and the ability to understand something, but you choose not to. Anosognosia means that they do not have the capacity or ability to understand something, so they can't, right? So if someone has dementia and they have anosognosia, most people do, then that means that they don't know they have dementia, which also means that they don't know they need help. Because in their own mind, they're completely fine. And this is not a choice. This is a cognitive deficit. This is a part of the brain in the frontal lobe that deals with self-awareness. And when dementia reaches that part, which it does pretty quickly, typically, then they lose the ability to understand. So how do we deal with that, right? We still need to provide care to these people. Here's what I want to show you. The caregiver, seen here in blue, and the person with dementia in yellow will come into a situation with separate thoughts and feelings that feel very much correct and very much reasonable to themselves, right? So let's take the example of taking a shower. This was the hardest thing with Patty. I, as the caregiver, might come in and I know several things for a fact. This is my reality. It has been 3 weeks since Patty has last showered. I know that Patty has incontinence at times, and so a shower is really important to cleanse her skin. I also know that Patty looks dirty, and it's going to be concerning, right? She needs to look better. I also know that I actually have the time right now today to give her a shower. And so she needs to shower, and she needs to shower now. Now, that is what I'm bringing into the situation. Patty has a different perspective. Patty thinks that she's already taken a shower today. Let me rephrase that. Patty knows that she's already taken a shower today. It's that real to her. Patty doesn't know why I want to see her naked so badly. She does not understand why I'm pushing this so much. Patty feels uncomfortable. Maybe her skin hurts. She doesn't want to get in the water. She needs to get out of this place. Maybe she feels like she has to go to work. Patty doesn't want to shower. So we have these two perspectives that are very much real to each person. And we hope that we can come together in this beautiful harmony and say, even though I know, Patty, even though you don't want to, it's important, so we'll do it. Is that how it works most of the time? Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, many of these scenarios, we can't explain things to them enough for them to agree to it. So we need to take a different approach. Instead of trying to join our reality with hers, we need to accept her reality and repackage ours in this idea of, if all of these things were true for me, in what situation would I shower? So let's break these down, considering the fact that everything they do makes sense to them. Patty says, I already took a shower today. So it's my responsibility to think, okay, do I like to shower multiple times in a day? Personally, I don't. I don't like doing my hair, drying it. I don't like putting on mascara and all of that again. So the only thing that would really get me to agree to shower more than once a day is if I was the winner of an all-inclusive spa day. This is what we did with Patty. So instead of saying, Patty, you smell, your hair is so greasy, you have to shower, it's been 3 weeks. Those things don't really matter to her. She doesn't have the self-awareness or the memory to know that that's true. But instead, we could say, Patty, congratulations. We did a drawing for an all-inclusive spa day, and you're never going to guess. You won. It has to be redeemed today, though. So, but yay! And so we would make a big deal about it. And we would warm up the shower room, we'd play music, and we would pamper her. And instead of this being a task that struggles with her independence, it's a prize. And she was much more accepting of it. She might say, I don't know why this lady wants to see me naked so badly. Well, if that were true, if I felt that way, I would want to be covered, right? I would want to have a robe. We used a robe with her. We covered her with towels. Every time she removed a piece of clothing, we covered her up with a towel. And those towels, we soaked them. The towels got so wet, but it allowed her to feel covered, and it was okay. We also strategically would use the shower curtain to allow a visual barrier between me and her, so she felt, even though I needed to look in sometimes and help her with some things, we used that visual barrier to make her feel safe. She had the concept or the idea of, like, my skin feels uncomfortable, right? My skin hurts. What we did is that we slowly proved to her that showering was going to be comfortable. And the way we did that is we put her feet in soapy water. We started very small. While she still had all her clothes on, we would wash her hands, we would wash her feet. And she realized, oh, actually, this kind of feels good. And a little at a time, we'd kind of push her pants up a little bit. We'd move up her leg, and we would take clothes off a little at a time. We needed to prove to her. She says, I need to get out of this place. I got to go to work, right? What we needed to do here is wait until we got into the bathroom, first of all, to bring up the concept of showering at times. Because if we told her while she was in the dining room or while she was in bed that she needed to shower, where she was, which was much better than that place. So sometimes you might need to bring your loved one to the area that they like, the bathroom, before you bring things up. That really helped. But it doesn't help the fact that she felt like she needed to go to work. So what we needed to do is give her an excuse that makes sense to her as to why she didn't need to work. So we would say, actually, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you, it's spring break and all the kids are out of school. You've got the week off. This is awesome. What are we going to do? Right? Let's have a great day. That's exciting. Not, no, you've been retired for 7 years. You haven't worked. You're not a teacher anymore, right? That feels much too confrontational. We need to think about how we can provide this information to her in a way that is non-confrontational and that makes sense to her reality. She says she doesn't want to shower, but the reality is that most people with dementia, when they don't want to do something, especially like showering, they actually enjoy it. 99% of people who I've worked with over my 9 years of being a speech therapist, I've done hundreds of showers with individuals with dementia. Most of them, by the end of it, say, oh, I feel so good. They say thank you, even though at the beginning they were like, absolutely not. They really enjoy it. But there's no amount of convincing at the beginning that's going to make them agree to it. We need to work within their reality. Some objections you might be thinking, well, you knew Patty's objections really easily. She was saying all of these things. My loved one doesn't say much anymore. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Many of these objections that we discovered from Patty weren't verbally stated. Sometimes we just needed to be observational. She didn't say, I don't want to shower because I think I need to work. Instead, she'd say, no, I don't have time to shower. No, 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 no. And then she would stand by the door and say, I've got to go. I've got to go to the kids, right? So sometimes you've got to put some puzzle pieces together. But if you can figure out what objections they have, then you can solve them much better. In the end, we were able to serve Patty so much better by understanding her condition, first of all, being informed, but also understanding her world better. It allowed us to be more empathetic, and we were able to meet her where she was and to be creative. I think it's a lot of fun to kind of think about these interventions, these different things we can do that makes them more agreeable. All right, guys. In these next few moments, we're going to allow you to think of some questions. So go ahead and be typing them in the Q&A. You can ask me any question you want about these topics. But I just want you to, number one, give yourself grace. You're going to mess up. You're going to do things the wrong way, right? There's not even a right or wrong when it comes to caregiving, but you're going to feel like you're doing things wrong. Have grace with yourself. Also know that whatever stage they're in, whatever situation you're in, it's not going to last forever. And third, keep trying new things. It's okay. Trial and error is what it's all about. We try things, it doesn't work. We try something else, it doesn't work. But one day you're going to find the thing that does. All right. Let's see if you all have any questions. All right.
It's like we have two in the Q&A.
Okay.
So they're gaining momentum here. So wonderful. Thank you all for having these questions so we can help everyone on the call today. She says, this is from Courtney. She says she's a huge fan and your IG content has been so helpful. The question is, my mom has dementia and my dad has very little patience with her. He teases her when she can't finish her sentences or talks too quietly. Mom is quite lovely to be around, but he's stressing everyone out. We had talks, but good behavior doesn't last. I know he's grieving too. He's sort of mean. Any advice for me?
Yeah. Especially when a spouse is having to care for their spouse with dementia, those communication, habits and those roles that you play in each other's life are so ingrained, it can be really difficult to change people and change how they see the person, change how they interact. So my best advice is to have lots of compassion and understanding with him that he is grieving. I recommend potentially him looking into doing some support groups. But the basis here is that he needs to be educated about the disease, because when he sees these mess ups, he's seeing his wife. If we can shift his perspective to seeing that it's a disease and it's not her, and if he can separate that a little bit more, then perhaps he can be more empathetic to his wife while grieving and hating the disease. If that makes sense.
Thank you. We also have another one. Courtney also says, I know my mom has white matter disease, a series of mini strokes. Could sharp, random neck pain be her actually feeling a stroke happen?
You know, I would ask a doctor about that, but because blood flow, any kind of vascular effects like that, any events, our blood flow changes in the brain, there could be potential. A lot of people do feel things when they're having a stroke, whether it's a blockage or a hemorrhage, which is where blood is coming out of the veins and things. So I would talk to a doctor, but there's potential it could be that she's feeling that.
Thank you. Also, Julie asked, can you give some tips on when your loved one keeps asking to go home? I think you covered it earlier, but yes.
Yeah. This is similar to the where is my mom question, which is we need to think about the feelings behind it. So when she's saying, I want to go home, often people will say that even when they are home. So it's not necessarily that it's a place that they're wanting to go. And my own grandmother did this a lot for a while. And I would say, tell me about your home. And she didn't actually even know what location. I wanted to know if it was the house that she just left a few months ago, or if it was her childhood home. And she didn't quite even know. But what they're communicating when they say, I want to go home, is that they're basically saying, I don't like this place and I don't feel comfortable or safe here. And home is a place where we feel comfortable and safe. And so when someone says, I want to go home, we can talk a little bit about maybe that topic, but different things. Tell me about your home. What does it look like? How many stories is it? But also we can just say, you know what? You're safe here. You're safe here. How can I make you more comfortable? And focus on that concept more.
Great, thank you. Can a person have a mixture of one or more types of dementia?
Yes. Actually, the majority of people with vascular dementia also have Alzheimer's disease as well. Any kind of combination is called mixed dementia. However, I know that sometimes when we hear descriptions of certain types of dementia, for example, under the slide where it says Lewy body dementia, visual hallucinations, we might say, well, oh, mom is having visual hallucinations, but she has Alzheimer's disease. Does she also have Lewy body? Here's the thing. Those descriptions match the first symptoms someone demonstrates. But as all of those types of dementia progress, as someone has dementia for many months, many years, they will start to show symptoms of all the other types. That just means that the disease is spreading to those other parts in the brain. So yes, they can have more than one, but just because they're showing symptoms of another doesn't mean they have another one.
Good. Someone asked, I have a tough time getting my mom to eat. She keeps saying that she doesn't like food, and I know she does. What can I do?
Yeah, you know, that is just might be a communication factor. It could be that she's saying, I don't like it because she doesn't want it. Maybe because she's having trouble eating it. So we need to consider, is she having a chewing or swallowing problem? If that's the case, you can ask your doctor for a referral for a speech language pathologist that can assess that. But also, this sounds kind of harsh, but don't ask, just present, I made this for you. Because often people will say they don't want to do something or they don't like something when really they're just having some apprehension. Maybe they're having some confusion. So I would say, okay, well, you don't have to eat it if you don't like it, but I'm just going to leave it here and walk away. Often they'll go ahead and eat it.
Excellent. We also have someone who said that my mom was just recently diagnosed with dementia. Any advice what to do to prepare for what's to come?
Yeah, the doctors and, social workers and things might talk to you about getting advanced directives in place, have conversations about what they want for their future. And that's important to do things like advanced directives, determining a power of attorney, all of those kind of legal things. But also I want to add to that is to focus on how you're going to care for her in the future. So I always encourage caregivers to make a list of their likes, their dislikes, the routines. When they get up in the morning, do they go straight and use the toilet, or do they make a cup of coffee, or do they take a shower? Do they like butter on their toast or just jelly, or butter and jelly? Things like that are going to make a difference, because in the future, if you can reflect the routines that they would do for themselves, you're going to have more success than if you're just trying to figure it out at the time. And so that's often underestimated. We think we're going to remember things about people, and we often don't. So make a list of their preferences and their routines.
And I would say, to go along with that too, at Prestige, we have what we call My Life Story. And so we really like to get as much information about your loved one if you do choose memory care. And, start with, where they were born and what their school days were like. And, did they marry? What was their religious preferences growing up? And trauma, you spoke about trauma and the impact that that can have on someone's life. And maybe they were in military service, or maybe they, have experienced some honor in life, or what their career was like. I think it's important that we try to, generate all that information that we can, write it down, journal it, because it will help you as you go along in the progression of the dementia, and to be able to have those reminiscing conversations with them. And maybe you can record it for other loved ones. I think all that's really important. I love storytelling, Adria. You do that so well with
Thanks. I love that Prestige does that, because that is so important. Making those memories that they might lose external, like getting them out on paper, somewhere that we can hold on to them, because we can bring them back later. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Let's see. Our next question says, can we get a copy of the slides? Yes, we will be sending out a copy of the slides after the presentation. And then Dale asked, when I try to encourage mom to do something, she takes it like a criticism. As an example, I need to encourage her to drink water to help her stay hydrated, and she gets upset and tells me that that I'm doing the best that I can. Any suggestions for encouraging her?
Yeah. A lot of times when that's kind of the response, I will say things like, yeah, I know I'm annoying. Like, once again, validate those feelings that she's demonstrating. I know I'm getting on to you. I don't like it when other people tell me what to do either, but I love you. In that moment, you can say that. But also think about how you can present these kind of things, telling them what to do in a way that's non-confrontational. So a good example of getting someone to drink is pour yourself a glass, pour them a glass, walk in, hand it to them and say, cheers, and take a big sip, right? That is a cue to get them to drink without saying, drink this.
Excellent. All right. So Sandra says, my 92-year-old dad has macular degeneration and has hearing aids. He cannot see to dial a phone number. He cannot hear once someone dials a phone for him. He can't remember when the voice response button is no longer available when he simply opens the phone. I cannot be there every day to help him. How do I help staff with his understanding of this? He's frustrated because he was a telephone employee for 32 years. Cell phones are now so strange. Any suggestions?
Yeah, there are a lot of products. When someone has difficulty seeing and hearing, that can be challenging. But there are some Amazon like Alexa devices that automatically connect with video and audio that he could potentially use. Perhaps he could also, I think it said he had hearing aids. There are some hearing aids that have Bluetooth compatibility. So perhaps you could find ones like that, where every time someone is calling their screen, their Alexa device, for example, it will automatically shoot the audio to his hearing aids. So there are a lot of products out there that are really neat. But as far as helping the staff understand that, I think just finding a product or finding a process that's going to be as smooth as possible, and then writing out in very simple words for the staff, step by step of what they need to do. In my experience working in long-term care, a lot of times we have a lot of things going on in our minds, and it's helpful for us to have memory techniques. We make signs for people with dementia, but I make signs for myself, and I make signs for the other people I'm working with sometimes of exactly what to do, just so that we can be most efficient as possible.
And we actually had a resident whose daughter found what was like an old style telephone, receiver that could plug into a cell phone. And so the staff knew to plug that in when her mom was trying to talk to them on the phone. It was very neat. So that was a great option for them. So you might look on Amazon for a telephone receiver that plugs into an iPhone or a smartphone.
There's so many cool products out there.
I love it.
Amazing.
Love it. Deanna says that my father is out of state and my stepmother is the primary caregiver. It's really difficult to convey strategies that might help her and dad. Any suggestions to get through to her?
Yeah, like education is the foundation of all improved care. And this is a shameless plug, but send her my videos. Honestly, that's one of the things that I really created. I have here on this next slide, but you can follow me at Be Light Care. Like Angie said earlier, I have Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can actually save those videos to your phone and text them. But I find, I want people to use my content in that way, that it's hard to tell your sister something she needs to do differently. But if you can find a video that tells her that thing, so I can tell her, so you guys don't fight, I would love for you to use it in that way. I have hundreds of videos about every single topic we talked about today. For sure, I've had videos about.
And that's really how I found Adria, and we were able to connect with her with your videos. And I really give them even to our care staff within our communities. If you're struggling with some different type of maybe aggression or something like that, and trying to understand the why behind it, Adria's videos have been so helpful in those ways. So on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, to be able, and they're just short and they give so much information. Adria, you pour so much information into those. And I think they really hit the reality of what we are experiencing every day in our own lives, dealing with whether it's our residents or a loved one. I think it's such a benefit for what you do.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, I know we have so many more questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box. We do have to cut off for our webinar today. Please know that this webinar will be sent out for those of you that registered. Those that are Prestige employees, you'll be getting a copy of it as well. And it will lie on our website. We also have, we encourage you to come to the Prestige Care .com website, as well as prestigecanhelp.com. We put lots of resources out there for you to answer your questions. We'll also be putting this available anytime that you give us an email at prestigecare.com. If you can connect with us, please ask for that, but we will putting it available for you, and we'll be sending it out to those of you that registered. I know there is so much information today that was so very helpful to all of us. And Adria, we're so grateful. I know within our 20 expressions neighborhoods that we have, our care staff are there to meet the needs. We try to find those different 5 senses you talked about, and addressing residents through their healthy activities, artistic, spiritual, tasty, educational, all of those things. And storytelling is so important for what we do. And you are certainly a storyteller that really helps our hearts and our minds to understand this disease and the different complexities of it and really provide help for us. So I'm so grateful for you being with us today. And please, my name is Angie France at prestigecare.com, Angie.France at prestigecare.com. You can always reach out to me as well. I'd be glad to help in any way that I can. And so thank you for being with us. And Adria, we look forward to seeing all of your new content in the future and everything that you shared with us today. It's been so beneficial. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And thank you so much for what you're doing in Prestige. I love hearing how you're serving residents there. It's awesome.
Grateful. So thanks everyone for joining us today. And we look forward to you being with us in the future. And you know, the holidays are coming up. I think Christmas is 3 months away from last Monday. It's a great time to start some of those journals to find out about your loved ones when you're with them during the holidays, and make sure that you're looking at those needs in a different perspective. What Adria gave us today, we really appreciate it so much, Adria. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.